Discipleship is teaching a man to be a man in Christ before another man. But Jerry said to me, he goes, an authentic man of God is one who rejects passivity, accepts responsibility, leads courageously, and invests eternally. Let me go back to copying the word, kind of a little rabbit hole here. When guys get hungry, we talk about the Bible as a resource for what I'm thinking, for what I'm needing to use as a kind of a roadmap for my life. But do we know what it says? And so, way back when I first started to hear about this authentic manhood course, this men's fraternity, we were studying something called A Man in His Design. And in A Man in His Design, one of the scriptures that was introduced, and I'd read it before, but didn't really apply it, was in Deuteronomy. God tells Moses that when you get to the kingdom, your people are going to want a king. So you got to pick a guy who's from yourself. Don't pick a foreigner, but pick a guy who doesn't love money too much, or women too much, or horses too much. And those kind of the three categories. He can't be distracted by money, women, or horses. But what he's to do in the first year of his reign is he's to make a copy of the law. And they had the law by then. They had Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And somehow Moses was able to compile all of this by the time they crossed over the River Jordan. Now, Moses didn't cross over the River Jordan with Joshua, but there was enough there of those 5 books of the Torah, of the law, to say this is how we are going to live our lives. This is how we're going to conduct ourselves as individuals and as a community. And your king is to write this in his own hand and refer to it every day of his life thereafter, and especially every day of his reign. And for a moment of clarity in reading scripture, I thought, man, I was in my mid 40s by that point. Okay. So 19 years ago. And so what I said to myself was, man, what if I had really thought about that as a young man in college, or as a young husband, or as a young dad? Can I do something like that? Can I copy Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy in a year? And so I'm kind of a tactical kind of guy, and I thought, what would that look like? And so 5 books of the Bible, several thousand verses. I was able to total all of that up and realize that if I copied 16 verses a day, I could do it in 365 days. I started copying Genesis on January 1st, and somewhere in February or so, I had to bag it. I couldn't do it. So I failed miserably the first time out. But in 2015, I copied the whole thing, and I was done by December 26th. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And what happened to me and my Bible-loving backbone was that it was steeled. There was something that had happened to me that I thought, okay, I know this is true because I feel it in my bones. I feel it in my spinal column. And something's happening to me that it always made sense because I wanted to believe it and everything, but I could viscerally feel Moses getting so mad that that's why he broke the tablets. He just spent so much time with God, who became so real to him, that he had to cover his face. And then to see the people not get it made him so angry. I'm sure he had to go back and go, I need 2 more. Yeah. Did you see anybody on this? Because I need a copy, right? And then go back and stuff. But I was feeling that. I was feeling the moments where in the camp, when they would do some things, I'm going, man, if I believe this, and I believe that happened like that, then I can visualize that. And what happened was I was writing. I'm left-handed, and I'm writing. I get a good pen, and I get a really good leather-bound Italian journal. Okay. And my hand never cramped. I would replace the pen. I would replace the ink in these pens, and I was being fed. I was being eternally fed by that behavior. So I used it, and I thought, man, this is really good. So I wrote an article about that, a year in the law, and what happened to me personally. And then I was invited on a ski trip, and they were going to study Ephesians. And so on the ski trip, with about 30 guys, a bunch of guys from Omaha, Nebraska, and a bunch of guys from Washington, D.C. We're meeting in Colorado. And we would ski all day, and then we'd have dinner, and then we'd have a Bible study at night. We were just going to go through Ephesians. And I said, why don't we copy it? Crickets. Why don't we study this as we copy it in our own hand? We've got, we're 12, 15 weeks out from the trip, got plenty of time. There's this amount of verses. We can do this. And if you copy 3 verses a day, you will have filled up your notebook, and then we can, just copy it. We all committed to that. And one of the guys was Catholic, and he said, I had to find a Bible. I knew we had one in the house. He said, so he asked his wife, he got the copy, he put it in front of him, and he said, by the time I copied the 3rd verse, something seismic happened in me. He said, this is real. He said, I don't know what's going on right now, but his heart became engaged with what his mind was doing and what the physical action was happening. And in that moment, he says, Jesus, I do believe in you. Forgive me of my sins, and, make me Lord of your life. I make you Lord of my life. He came to the ski week, and he said, and then this was his testimony, and the dude's on fire. And he said to me, he goes, what is it about this? I said, I don't get it. Well, today, that happened about 6 years ago. Today, he's leading his own Bible study in a small town near Groton, Connecticut. This kind of thing happens. And so in those early years of my dad saying something that planted a seed, and for me to do it in my 40s, and then be able to say, now I'm 61, this works. And getting another guy to do it who uses that to bring other guys along. I think discipleship is it as simple as that? Where we get sidetracked is we try to overcomplicate. We try to overcomplicate friendship. And one of the models that I really like is Jesus poured himself into 3 dudes. We don't see him interacting all the time the way he interacted with Peter, James, and John. We don't see him interacting with the other 9 that much. But we see him really pouring himself into those 3. Now, is that the mathematical equation were each of them supposed to pour themselves into their 3? And does that make it possible that if we invite 3 men into our lives, we can do that? That God knows our capacity for the 24/7, 365, that if we pour ourselves into 3 more guys, that's sustainable? That we're not going to wear ourselves out. We're not going to be so distracted because we got 15 guys on our calling list or on our text list or all that. We got too many people, and we get so distracted that we don't have time to actually pour into 3 more men. These guys are fishing, and he sits there. He feeds them. He invites them to breakfast. He's on the beach after the resurrection. And what's his first inclination is? He invites them over for fish and chips and coffee. I don't know, He invites them over for breakfast. And then after breakfast, he looks at Peter and he goes, how much do you love me? Right? Remember the story, how it goes? But it's after breakfast. He's sitting on the beach. They go, oh, that's him. And they're jumping off the boat. They're swimming towards him and things. And he's all about spending time, pouring into them, reconciling them so that they can then turn around and do the exact same thing to each other. Peter's not such a knucklehead after that. I think his sin in denying who Christ was devastated him so much when he wept bitterly, and now he's forgiven extravagantly. He's juxtaposing those 2 occurrences in his life, and he goes, all right, this is how I need to be. And he lived his life under that understanding of what that forgiveness was and what that friendship was and what that grace was, and then how to put that together and tell other people that this is worth believing. And if I can do that with three more guys, three more guys consistently, and encouraging them to say, hey, who are three guys in your life that you can do this with? That's sustainable. I have the capacity for that as a guy who's married, has children, has grandchildren, has friends, has travel. My elderly parents still need my attention. I need to pay bills. I need to spend time with people and things. I have all these other things that are part of my life that I need to be a part of. I think I can include three more people on a regular basis into that. And that's where discipleship is for me today, is encouraging guys, starting new men's groups and things, but finding those two or three in there to just do this with. And then saying, who are those two or three in your life? Who are those three in your life that you can do this with? That's something I can do. And I feel youthful at 61. I would love to be able to do this at 101. I knew a guy in church in Bolivia, South America, where I grew up as a missionary kid. He was over 100. He was 101, 102, and he was still having an impact as a missionary. His wife had died like 40 years before, right? His kids are living in the US. He got grandkids and great grandkids, and who knows, at 100 years old, he had the energy. It had to be supernatural because, Cochabamba, Bolivia at that point's, 8,000 to 9,000 feet above sea level. So you got to have something. How's that work? And so I want to be like that. God says to his son, not yet, not yet, not yet. Well, Steve's got something to do. You know, Barry has something to do, and Barry Y has something to do, and Barry D has something to do. The three of us, you know, there's nine guys who are part of this that we're reaching into. Those nine guys times three is 27. The math increases really quickly. But if I spend time with three more guys in the week, I think that's super doable.
Appreciate the simplicity of your sharing. We want to sometimes make discipleship so difficult, and it comes down to relational, it comes down to being willing to share what you have heard and walking another friend with that information. It's walking it out. I thought of Moses. There was a time, I think daily, that we find him in the scriptures away from everyone and spending time with the Lord. I didn't realize till last year there was one person that joined him as a teen, and that was Joshua.
Mm-hmm.
So every day he's following Moses into the tent, spending time with the living God, and Joshua is picking up the mentoring, time with God, abiding. So when Moses dies, it's not a shock for me that Joshua is ready. He's been mentored by Moses. And the
Yep.
things that you shared were simplistic, relational, getting guys to engage not on you or in you, but on Christ is going to continue the process. A quick definition that I recently posted was discipleship is the process of becoming like Jesus so we can love God and love others the same way Jesus does. And so you're marking a journey to go with three guys, and that's pointing them to Jesus, and he'll continue it. So I really appreciate what you shared.